The killer entered the room brandishing a knife as the girl was tethered to the wall. Two young girls, Mafuyu and Tomo, go to a sacred academy and at the moment are in a church, praying in front of the mark of God, like how their uncle instructed them in the past. While Tomo was still nodding off, Mafuyu pulled out her wooden sword and struck her on the head, waking her up. It had been 3 days since Tomo had attended class, and now they were being compelled to come. As they ran to class, Tomo tripped and fell over when Mafuyu stopped abruptly. Mafuyu came over to greet Teresa, a blonde girl. Mafuyu is delighted that Teresa finally remembered her name. Mafuyu was certain that Teresa was hiding something because she was so mysterious and only gave a light nod before leaving. When they entered the classroom, Tomo's table was vandalized by someone. Mafuyu looked around to see who's the culprit when a brown-haired girl announced that she did it. It was all Hana's doing. Mafuyu gripped Hana's neck furiously. The class had begun to believe that Tomo's father, the ex-headmaster, was responsible for the murders after her father's absence and a string of homicides. Mafuyu was about to strike when the pink-haired Miyuri reminded her that she would be expelled from the dorms if she used violence. As a result, Mafuyu withdrew her hand. Later, it is shown that Teresa is attending the school to look into the murders, just as the pastor had surmised. Meanwhile, Tomo was running away from Mafuyu as they were playing, when she ran into a silver-haired boy. Mafuyu thought the boy looked a lot like the infant depicted in the church artwork. He had just met the girls and he has already done something heinous to Tomo before he even opened his eyes. Rushing over, Mafuyu smacked him until he passed out. Mafuyu was a bit violent to the boy, so they had to take him back to the dorms to take care of him. But Tomo was curious because he looked too much like a girl. He then abruptly vanished when she was about to check on him. Mafuyu stormed out and then noticed that the church was ragingly ablaze. Mafuyu raced in and tried to save the painting that her uncle loved so much, but she was then caught by the killer. She specialized in murdering virgins without a significant other. Mafuyu was cuffed to the wall, and the killer kept talking about how she and Tomo don't fit in and have no friends here. Mafuyu was dejected and prepared to die, but the murderer chose to destroy the painting instead of going after her. Mafuyu pleaded her to stop, but she was unconcerned. Then, the silver-haired boy arrived to save Mafuyu at the exact moment. After assisting in the release of Mafuyu's ties, he was worn out. The murderer was a little frightened, since this man was Shasha, the strongest atheist. The killer attacked them again, while Shasha was exhausted, but Teresa appeared in time to halt her and displayed her breast to Shasha. After finishing his business, the church windows were blown away. The Holy Cross transformed into a scythe with just one touch, as Shasha stood atop of it. When at his best, he would make the murderer feel what it felt like to be terrified. The killer was then slain with just a single slash. After Mafuyu thanked him, the conceited youngster quickly left. She went to church the following morning, but was surprised to see the church looked unscathed from last night. She came in to ask the pastor where was Teresa. He said that she was feeling unwell, so she's resting for the moment. Later in class, Shasha stepped in the classroom to study, which was another surprise. The girls trembled at the sight of the cute little boy. Mafuyu questioned the boy when it was recess. Shasha became disgusted when Hana and Miyuri also came over and called him by his real name. To warn Mafuyu not to concern herself with him, Shasha glanced over at her and said that she would be in danger if she did. Episode 2. After awakening from her nightmare, Mafuyu discovered Tomo was sick. Mafuyu visited the church by herself while Tomo stayed at the dorm to rest. Despite the fact that she couldn't comprehend what it meant, Mafuyu continued to look over at the painting before leaving. This was the fabled image that had the power to alter the global equilibrium. Tomo's father had to conceal it at the school for fear that would occur, but it no longer seemed to be an option. Shasha was sitting on a bench when Mafuyu came to find him. Mafuyu attempted to question him about the recent murders. Mafuyu was incensed that the murderer knew everything about her and Tomo. She couldn't just stand still and wait for them to reappear and kill them. But Shasha didn't really care, so Mafuyu had to accuse him of being the same as those murderers. Standing up, Shasha pointed a knife at her throat. If she didn't know anything, then she should stop talking. He would kill anyone who dared to lay their hands on that seal. That was his mission. He ridiculed Mafuyu for calling him a murderer, even though having no idea of what's going on. He spoke for a short while before passing out. While dreaming, Shasha gets to see a fragment of his memory. When he awoke, he was laying in Tomo's lap. The moment Mafuyu came back from cooking some food, Sasha was going to depart. But the girls wanted him to stay and eat. After some edging from Tomo, he finally gave in and had a taste of the soup. Because it was so good, he grabbed the plate and kept eating. After this, Sasha gave them the permission to use his own name to address him. Their food made his heart sway a bit, so he'll grant them this. Teresa then came to escort Sasha, but before leaving, Teresa told Mafuyu to be cautious. Even when Mafuyu was bathing, she was still confused by what Teresa's words meant. The topic about Sasha was then brought up by Tomo and her friend. While he can be a harsh person around Mafuyu, Sasha was really adorable around them. Finishing bathing, Mafuyu told Tomo to go to bed first, in fear that she might catch another fever in the morning. The entire day, Ayana, the girl that has been with them the entire time, had been a huge assistance. Mafuyu didn't have time to express her gratitude until now. After Tomo had left, Ayana inquired about what's going on. Even she and Tomo were unaware of what the others were searching for. Out of the blue, the murderer from before has returned, and she captures Ayana, taking her away. When Mafuyu caught up to her, the murderer wanted her to reveal everything she knows about the seal. If not, she will kill Ayana. Mafuyu recalled Sasha's advice that she should stand up for herself. If not, then she can't save anyone else. Pretending to toss her training sword over, Mafuyu rushes forward and demasks the individual. But she didn't expect that it was Tomo who was under the mask. Too shocked to do anything, Sasha and Teresa have arrived to help Mafuyu, but his target wasn't Tomo. He was after Ayana. He knew that she was the real mastermind behind the murders, and is only controlling Tomo. With her cover blown, she jumps away, still holding Tomo. Sasha hurried to strike after gaining some energy from Teresa. Ayana did the same with Tomo, increasing her strength. She flung a few daggers at Sasha, but they were enough to crack his scythe. Her blades are made out of magnesium, a harder metal than Sasha's iron scythe, so she stood tall and self-assured as she dished out more daggers. Sasha then used some kind of power to heat up his scythe, blocking the daggers. Then using parts of his scythe to fire at Ayana, but he wasn't able to touch her. She was going to burn Tomo, but through some chemistry, Sasha was able to put out the flames. Using his heated scythe, Sasha ran towards Ayana, melting through her weapons, impaling her, and finally ending her. He then gave Tomo to Mafuyu, and warned her that now Tomo's energy has been used, she will be sought after by the bad guys. He swore to defend Tomo if Mafuyu was reluctant to leave the academy. Contrary to what Mafuyu thought, they had to share their home with Sasha ever since, which baffled Mayuri. Episode 3. Sasha stood beside Tomo's bed as she slept, his attention drawn to her breasts. Suddenly, Mafuyu burst in and seized Sasha and asked him why he was here, which Sasha replied that he was doing research on endless power. He continued to utter while he couldn't take his eyes off of Tomo's chest. Sasha then awoke from his nightmare. He yelled, which prompted Mafuyu and Tomo to rush in. When Tomo cautiously wiped away his sweat, he was actually more interested in her breasts. Mafuyu angled him. He wasn't interested in her breasts, Sasha said in opposition. Then, even though this was their home, he told them to leave his room. It's only when Sasha pointed out that Mafuyu wasn't dressed properly that she came running out of the room. In class, as Mafuyu hurled her rage onto her notebook, meanwhile, Sasha was getting everyone's admiration by solving a really difficult question. After class, Mafuyu took him out to remind him not to be disrespectful to the teacher. But Sasha disregarded her and left. Mayuri approached him to compliment him on his talent and knowledge, trying to befriend him. Sasha didn't need her to approach him, since he would avoid her more otherwise. During swimming class, Sasha would sat nearby the pool for the entirety of the lesson. Mayuri promised to force Sasha to follow her in a furious manner. Hana decided to try her own method. She hurried over to Mafuyu and Tomo and began to slant her words at Mafuyu. Sasha then interrupted their bullying, just as Mafuyu was about to start crying. He dealt with these bullies by squeezing Mayuri's chest and lamenting how impoverished Mayuri was and how she would never be like Tomo. In order to meet with the pastor, Sasha went to the church after class. Unfortunately, he has made his position known to the bad guys. He couldn't leave since he had pledged to protect Tomo. No longer terrified, Sasha even wished for their arrival to happen swiftly. Mafuyu prepared Sasha's room that evening, and it served as his space ever since. Sasha was reminded by Mafuyu that this was a girls' dorm. Therefore, going forward, he had to knock before going into any of the rooms. Later, when they were conversing in the bathtub, Sasha burst in. Mafuyu quickly covered herself and threw everything she could, but Sasha dodged all of them. Sasha gave a look at the two's breasts and complimented them before leaving. They went seeking for him after getting dressed, but he was nowhere to be found. Mafuyu went to the church to look for him because she had an idea of where he might be. When they got there, Mafuyu got to see Sasha replenishing his powers with Teresa. While trying to avert Tomo's gaze, Mafuyu thought that Sasha was only 13, and she was his guardian, so she was forced to come even though she didn't want to. Elsewhere, a little girl and her coffin were traveling to Japan, when several robbers burst into the room to open the coffin's lid. However, as soon as they did, something dreadful appeared, sending them straight to the afterlife. The following morning, Kurae, the girl, was picked up by Mayuri and Hana. At first, Hana didn't seem to care, but when she laid eyes on the girl, she was fixated on her. Kurae came upon Sasha and his friends as they were traveling. She gave a light grin before continuing. Kurae was then taken to a clothing store to try on a few outfits. Hana had some feelings for her, as Kurae was aware. When they were left alone, Hana was requested to unzip Kurae's dress. Hana's heart pounded. Kurae then suddenly passed out. She waited for Hana to come close to kiss her. Hana was quickly thought to be a pervert by Kurae. To arrest Hana, Kurae called upon her mama. Kurae would forgive Hana as long as she admitted her sins, saying that she might get a better kiss in a different position. Episode 4. There was no denying Hana's perversion based on her behavior. She tried to deny it, but Kurae came forward and told Hana what kind of person she truly was. Hana would then serve as her female slave going forward. Mafuyu continued to buy aggressively in the meanwhile, but she essentially paid a ridiculous cost that alarmed Sasha. According to Mafuyu, this was a method for saving money. Then an attractive man was looking for someone, when he suddenly approached and handed them a flyer. Even though this was the safest country in the world, terrible atrocities continued to happen. Mafuyu still wanted to visit one more location. Tomo suggested going to the lingerie retail district, but Tomo was having trouble choosing a bra because of her massive size. Mafuyu ran over to give Teresa some nice suggestions. Teresa wasn't very concerned, she just needed it to be convenient and could take off quickly. When they needed to try on their new bras, Sasha accompanied them. His reasoning is that he was there to protect them. Mafuyu bonked him on the head and drew him outside to examine some more stuff. Suddenly, when Tomo and Teresa finished trying on their bras, the store clerk came in with a taser and seized them. When Mafuyu returned, the clerk informed her that Teresa and Tomo had departed by the emergency exit. Mafuyu didn't believe it. Tomo wouldn't have left if she wasn't with her. Sasha entered the changing area and smelled a weird odor. He then disarmed the clerk of her taser and found a trapdoor that the clerk had led the two girls away. At the moment, Tomo was being photographed by perverts, and Teresa was tied to a chair. Sasha burst through the ceiling and landed to halt them. Sasha inquired Teresa on how this could happen, since she was with Tomo, but she replied that she was distracted. When Kurae suddenly came out of the ground and started attacking them, Mafuyu was terrified and was on the verge of calling the police. Sasha knows that Kurae is using copper as her main element, so after recharging his powers, he began to retaliate. His element was stronger and tougher, yet he couldn't cut through her copper, and instead Sasha got caught. Kurae tells him about the wonders of copper before using copper's most common trait and electrocute Sasha. She then proceeds to pin him to a wall. When Sasha turned out not to be as powerful as rumored, Kurae shied disappointedly. To help Sasha, Mafuyu drenched Kurae and her mama in water. So if she used electricity again, then she'll be shocked as well. After a little talk with Teresa, Kurae decides to retreat for now. Kurae then returns to Miyuri and Hana. When Miyuri came back to check on the two, she saw that Kurae was completely soaked. Kurae made up a story that a silver-haired boy did this to her, which Miyuri immediately assumed that it was Sasha, which infuriated her. One of the 12 apostles was Kurae. She could be an ally, but Teresa nor Sasha had any idea. But if Kurae does have any nefarious plans, then she would be rather troublesome. Sasha exclaimed that he was able to defeat her on his own, even without Mafuyu's help, which the girls found cute of him. Later, Miyuri was saddened to know that Kurae wasn't going to live with her because her accommodation has already been decided. Hana was returning to her apartment. When she got home, she discovered that Kuraya was going to live with her from now on, because a master and slave must share a place. Kuraya seized Hana, making it impossible for her to refuse. Episode 5. Teresa awoke from her nightmare, remembering how she had watched helplessly as her caretaker was defiled when she was younger. Kuraya was tormenting Hana while this was happening. She always thought up of a new game to play. More and more assassins came to Japan in pursuit of the sacred artwork. They even hired one of the Lord's 12 apostles to assist them. When the pastor knew that the heretics were approaching, he charged Teresa and Sasha with putting a stop to them. He wondered how Teresa would respond if she had to face her past. Elsewhere, Sasha is having a picnic with Mafuyu and Tomo. He has found his new favorite snack, which is sliced cucumber. While in school, Hana claimed to be ill in order to flee to the medical facility. Despite being aware that she was completely fine, the teachers chose to let her stay this time, before leaving. Out of the blue, Kuraya appeared and ordered Hana to remove all of her clothing and lay on the bed with her. Mafuyu went to the restroom and accidentally came across Teresa inside, as Sasha proceeded to the church with the group. Sasha reminded her as she stood outside that while people were using the restroom, that is when they were most vulnerable, and told Teresa to always be on guard. Later, Mafuyu and Tomo both questioned Sasha about Teresa's origins. However, even he doesn't know. The pastor then arrived to respond to all of their queries. Teresa is brought to an orphanage because she was from a country that was going through a civil war, and her family was a casualty of that war. At the orphanage, Teresa treated everyone as though they were family. However, those blissful days were brought to an abrupt end when a man named Kroa and his men arrived to massacre the entire orphanage, with only Teresa escaping because she hid in the closet. After that incident, she came to the school to empower Sasha and safeguard the secrets of the painting, which meant protecting Mafuyu and Tomo. Knowing the truth, Mafuyu and Tomo both came to find Teresa to try to be more of a friend to her. But then, Teresa and Tomo both smelled something very weird in the air. Recognizing the scent, Teresa's expression suddenly altered. Teresa trembled and did absolutely nothing when Kroa found them and took Tomo hostage. Kroa started grabbing Tomo. Teresa was scared at first, but after mustering up the courage, she hurried to save Tomo. However, Kroa caught her and was about to kill her, when Mafuyu threw a bag of lime powder at the man, and she quickly pulled the two girls away. As soon as Sasha arrived, the enraged Kroa spat out the deadly gas. The killer who controlled the chlorine gas was also one of the 12 apostles. Sasha threw some iron stakes at Kroa, but his chlorine gas easily melts iron. Sasha then turned a nearby iron pole into a scythe and rushed to attack. Kroa also has his own tricks. After dipping his hands into water, reacting with the chlorine, and he splashes the acid water at Sasha, melting his scythe away. Sasha was in danger. Then, from nowhere, a shield dropped to the ground. Seeing this, Teresa asked Mafuyu to help her. Mafuyu took up the shield and rushed at Kroa. He tried to melt the shield, but it wouldn't. Getting close enough, Teresa came jumping forward and kicked the apostle away, allowing Sasha the opportunity to kill him. Teresa was happy that she finally faced her past, but Sasha was a little bit annoyed that Kuraya helped him in the form of the shield that the girls used. Unlike iron, copper could not be melted by chlorine gas. In the evening, Teresa came to Mafuyu's dorm, asking to live with Sasha. She realized that she is his energy supplier, so she needed to be by his side wherever and whenever he was, because she was Sasha's partner. Episode 6. Tomo and Mafuyu were required to dress as maids, as they are going to work for the Miyuri family. Naturally, it was a promise, not voluntarily. A few days back, Mafuyu unexpectedly was woken up by a delicious smell. Now that Teresa has moved in with them, Mafuyu had no more work to do because Teresa took it as her responsibility, including cleaning and preparing breakfast. Sasha had to comment that the food was not bad, despite being a Japanese meal, and that it was a little sparse. Mafuyu was still curious about the objectives of the apostles, so she came to the church to find the pastor. Even though they know what they were protecting, they had no idea where this seal is kept. The pastor advised Mafuyu not to worry too much. They just need Sasha to eliminate them all. Mafuyu entered her uncle's bedroom to look around. She had looked everywhere but had yet to find anything. She had a hunch on where it could be, but she needed to have the dorm's master key, which is in Miyuri's possession. And of course, Miyuri naturally denied. It's only when Kuraya thankfully came and requested Miyuri to rethink her decision that she agreed, but with a condition. Due to Miyuri's request, Sasha also had to come here wearing a cute maid outfit. Sasha thought that it was stupid and was about to leave, but Mafuyu threatened not to cook his favorite soup. With no choice, Sasha acted compliant, despite his reluctance. Tomo thought this was a great learning experience for Sasha and encouraged him to do his best. They were then taken aback when Kuraya abruptly appeared. Despite his best efforts, Sasha was unable to drive her away. Later, Kuraya and Mafuyu were having a little chat, which then Miyuri explains that a highly expensive artifact that even money cannot purchase will be on display at the exhibition on the following day. It belonged to the Miyuri family. But then, a band of robbers suddenly surrounded them out of nowhere. Sasha was not able to reach the iron bar in time, so he was knocked unconscious. These people showed up to take that priceless artifact. Of course, it wasn't that simple, because it was currently located in the underground vault of Miyuri's warehouse. The robbers were misinformed, but that wasn't a problem, because they have the orders to enjoy themselves. When Kuraya was about to be attacked by one of the robbers, Miyuri stepped in to defend her. She was in charge of looking after her staff as the owner. Miyuri implored them not to touch her, so they insisted on her getting onto the platform and stripping. Miyuri was forced to follow as she took off her clothing. Kuraya exclaimed that she was truly a fool. Kuraya inquired about joining in on the fun as well. Kuraya took this chance to obtain some energy from Miyuri. With the help of Hana bringing the coffin here, she calls forth Mama and slays all the robbers, except one with more competence. He knew what Kuraya was. With a revolver in hand, he attempted to kill her, but failed. Copper was used to make the shell casing, and Kuraya was a master of this material. Kuraya was about to put an end to this man's life when he talked about his old squad being annihilated by a user of sodium, called Phoenix. Sasha told Kuraya to stop, so he can get more info on this Phoenix, but he didn't have much left to give before committing suicide. Sasha protected them from the explosion, but his mind was filled with hatred. When his sister was killed by the gold user, he was accompanied by Phoenix. He had vowed to kill these two on his own. Due to the explosion, Miyuri's exhibition was also postponed.